Welcome to r/Reddit Revenge. This is a story of someone getting back at someone with revenge after being wronged. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel and for so many likes. The first story. New apprentice displays a consistently bad attitude and refuses to learn. His experienced coworkers respond by working faster to minimize their time with him, resulting in shorter workdays. The second story. After enduring relentless telemarketing calls, the narrator discovered a technical slip-up by the telemarketing company. The third story. Amidst a challenging living situation with unfriendly roommates, the narrator found an unexpected way to resolve their issues. And the first story is, you're gonna have an SH attitude when we try to teach you the skills to be good at your new job? Fine, we'll sacrifice our own hours to make sure you get even less. Our boss hired an apprentice a couple of months ago, and it's become an absolute chore to work him. Anytime myself or my supervisor try to teach him anything, he gets offended that we aren't respecting him as a 34-year-old man with a wife and kids. Now, this would normally not be an issue for me, as I judge coworkers by two things. The first being quality and pride of their workmanship, which I understand that his is not going to be up to par with mine due to lack of experience. That just needs time. The second is their attitude, which I understand that everyone has bad days, but his SH attitude has become an almost daily thing, and there's not much I can do about that. I don't care if he has 5 wives, 47 kids, and 3 balls. We're trying to teach you, and he cops attitude nearly every effing time. Now, I should mention, my supervisor has been doing this for about 15 years. I've been in this trade for about 6 years now, and this is the exact way that he was taught by the owner of the company we work for. This is how I learned. This is how our last several apprentices learned, and not a single one has had attitude problems like this. Now, I've been given the lion's share of teaching this guy the ropes, and it becomes a chore of reteaching him the same basic skills, and subsequently dealing with his attitude at least once a week for the last 3 months. My breaking point came a couple of weeks ago when our supervisor was making a parts run, and I was instructed to watch him and make sure he doesn't royally F anything up. So that's great. I get to watch this guy fumble around for 2 hours with a job I could do in a quarter of the time. About an hour and a half into this, admittedly I got bored and whipped out Alien Blue for a couple minutes here and there, because he was on top of a ladder in a closed ceiling, and I can only see from about his waist down. Not exactly an exciting view, trust me. He comes down and asks me, "You just gonna sit there all day, or do you actually gonna do some work?" At this point, my fuse is lit, so I walk away to cool off and do some other work, while he finishes off what he was doing. After he had finished, and I had significantly cooled down, I came up to him and told him, "Dude, do me a favor. Don't ever accuse me of just sitting around ever again, because it's a surefire way to peeve me off." And his next words sealed his fate with me. "Well, first of all, you don't effing talk to me like that." And I blew up at him. I didn't care where he went as long as he got the F away from me, and that if he wanted to learn how to do this trade, to find someone else to do it, because I was effing done with him. If I, the authority, I would have fired him on the spot, but the owner told us both to grow a pair and play nice. Old school Southern guy, gotta love it. And has been dumping him on our laps ever since because he thinks he's a good worker. Now, both the supervisor and I are pretty close after working together for so many years, and we're both tired of this guy's BS, so we agreed to both work as fast as we can in order to deal with the apprentice as little as possible. This is a huge double-edged sword, as we're all paid hourly, and once the work is done, we very seldom have any more, because business has been a bit slow recently. This leads to anywhere from 3 to 5 hour workdays, when it would take us 8 with the apprentice. Thankfully, we both have other methods of income, so it's not affecting us too harshly. The epitome of this came today when both my supervisor and I were asked to show up early for an after-hours inspection on a suite we had just finished. 2 weeks ahead of schedule, I might add. So we had a 2-hour lead on the apprentice after the inspector was finished. We busted A through a 3-hour job in a little more than an hour, with the new guy walking into the building just as we were finishing, having to stand around and do nothing, and then taking tools and parts back down to the truck for a grand total of about 15 minutes. That look of pure disgust on his face when the owner told us that was all we had for today was priceless. The trainee turns out not only to lack the necessary skills, but also to demonstrate a bad attitude and inattention to learning, which makes his staff extremely unhappy. You and your employee experienced real ingratitude and aggression from an intern who was not ready to learn and resorted to a negative attitude. Your reaction to this situation, working together to solve the problem by getting the work done faster and without the intern's input, looks like a response that allows you to maintain your productivity and efficiency. Unfortunately, this action also resulted in a reduction in working hours, but it seems that you and your employee have found a way to come to terms with this. Sometimes people don't understand the value of learning and development opportunities, and this can lead to missing out on opportunities to grow as an employee. You tried to fulfill your responsibilities and train the intern, but his own attitude was getting in the way. He chose this path on his own. The second story is, oh, you slipped up while doing something obnoxious and technically illegal? So I have a special relationship with telemarketers. I've had the same number for maybe decades now, at least 1 decade. Way back in the days, some dude in Russia, I've spent some time in questionable corners of the internet. I pirated the source list and tracked it to the guy who created it. Managed to put a couple data points together and sell my phone number and name as part of a list for scams. I'm on both the US and India do not call lists. Every call is a violation of this. I'm pretty sure that most Indian telemarketing firms actually source the do not call list for numbers. Effers. One of the groups that got a hold of this list has been a thorn in my A for years. They've called sometimes daily. Much less these days though, for reasons you'll soon know for years. I'm fairly certain that it's a group of groups. They all use the same name for the front, US Pharmacy, but sometimes their MO will change up a bit. Sometimes they F up. This happened as a result of a particularly aggressive month of harassment and them effing up. So over the course of this month, I'm getting daily calls, multiple calls in a day. I've grown tired of effing with them over the phone, messing up their KPIs with dead leads, straining their sanity with my ignorance. I'm just done. Then I noticed the caller ID on the latest call wasn't populated, just the number. The reason this is significant is that most of these guys spoof their return number on the caller ID. They make it look like a local number, and simultaneously obfuscate attempts to track the call back to them specifically. When the number is local and on the same cell carrier, the caller ID returns the name registered to the number. The fact that this one didn't imply the possibility that the number wasn't being properly spoofed. Fun fact, it was a very recent development at this time that the courts had determined that phone carriers on US soil were liable for the misuse of their system by their clients, regardless of the origin of the client activity. Violations of the do not call list are misuse. I did a carrier lookup on the number and found it was registered to a California-based VoIP provider. Effing jackpot. I checked the last few calls and sure enough, same provider. Effing royal flush. I'm still being irrationally decent to these folks, so I decided I'm going to give the US carrier an opportunity to do right. I go through my call history for the month and record every number and timestamp that doesn't have a populated ID. I compile the list in a text file as tab separated value format. Still just a basic text file though. I add a column for the carrier lookup data as well that points straight at them. They have no ground to stand on, and they can either step up or get smacked the F down. I look up the contact details for the US carrier, and I write them a polite email that essentially tells them, here's data representing my substantial call history for the last month, just from your client, in a text file that absolutely shows you're enabling circumvention of the United States federal do not call list, as well as the do not call list for India by your client, US Pharmacy based in India. Here are the court documents detailing the precedent of your liability for this violation by your clients. I'm giving you a chance to remedy this situation before I go to the FCC with my findings. Either you provide evidence that you've dropped them as a client per your customer agreement policies and the calls stop, or I drop the effing nuke. They responded saying they couldn't open the text file. Bad move. You know who was able to open the file? The FCC. I did the math on the fines that these calls would have generated against the carrier. $43 million, give or take. The calls stopped that week. An impressive example of a scam from a fraudster who used a fake number for a local police department. During the call, he informed me that the police had a warrant for my arrest and demanded immediate payment with iTunes gift cards. Otherwise, police officers would be sent to the location to arrest me. His most vulnerable mistake was that he spoofed that phone number of the local police without knowing that I was a police officer. Given that I was a desk sergeant and had no active arrest warrants, this deception became extremely obvious as soon as I answered the call. I wasted an hour playing the role of the clueless and wasted the time of the fraudster. Most importantly, I filed a crime report and noted that it was a scam, which saved others from being scammed. Many people have also contacted us with gratitude for our timely response to this fraud and for protecting them from possible financial losses. The third story is main character, her boy toy, and daddy. About 5 years ago, I, 35 male, had a lovely roommate experience. I'll try to be brief, but I have to set the stage. I had a bit of a midlife crisis and quit my job, and through Hike the AT, decided to start my own business with an old college friend and move across the country. When I did, I moved into a room in the house he was renting from an old high school friend of his. For my $600 a month, I got a bedroom and a house full of miserable bees. G was my business partner and fellow renter. MC, 25 female, is daddy's little girl that stays rent-free with her boy toy, 24 male, BT from here out, in the master suite. G has a traveling job, so he and I are working on starting the business, of course, while he's there, but that's not much. So we worked on it over phone or FaceTime, whatever needed done. So I spent a lot of my time there with these strangers. Tried to be cordial, cleaned dishes, cooked food for the group, tried to act like a guest even though technically I was a tenant. Well, let's just say they didn't seem to want me there, and G, my only ally, was on the road like 8 weeks out of 10. Was physically assaulted by the BT because he was upset I was working too hard and showing him and his boys up. I got a PT job at the same landscaping spot as him to keep money coming in. Their behavior got better when G was around, but always turned to being cold again and occasionally violent as soon as he left again. BT was definitely physically abusive to MC as well. Daddy, mid-40s, would play video games and act oblivious to all of it. I think this is why both of them hated me so much. Because I would step in when it got violent. Even though BT was much bigger than me, I was apparently the only person who would give him hell for his BS. G was never there, or maybe he would have. Some of these scenes got ugly, as you might imagine. So eventually it became apparent that we would need to move closer to the metro area to get the business where it needed to be. Also to get out of that situation, to say the least. So we did, and moved out as well. That apparently caused some issues. G and I were paying $1,200 in rent combined, and I'm sure we were paying their mortgage. None of them worked with any regularity, so when we moved they seemed to be okay with it. But you know, passive-aggressive stuff like claiming kitchenware items were theirs that were mine and stuff like that. Anyways, here's where the story really starts. One day we get an appointment for up in their area actually, which wasn't odd at all. So I went to serve the customer and it ends up being an obviously vacant home. We had never had something like this happen before, so I started wondering, as one does, what's really going on. So after a few moments I figured I'd try a Google search on the phone number and see what happens. Didn't think anything would come up, but I was wrong. MC is not the sharpest tool in the shed. MC decided that it would be a fun prank to schedule an appointment with me via text on her burner phone. Coincidentally, she had used this burner phone's number to advertise herself on an escort site, with photos and everything. It came right up on that Google search. Whatever, if that's what she wants to do, I won't judge. But I do know that Daddy will. I also know that Daddy is the only way to stop her horse SH pranks. So I put together a nice little text message to Daddy, including the screenshots of her setting the appointment with me showing her number, then a screenshot of her escort page. I told him if I hear from her or even him again, he's not so little grow is going to become not so secret anymore. I haven't heard from either of them since. This story demonstrates how important it is to remain calm and respond to difficult circumstances with dignity and understanding. You managed to cope with a difficult situation and find a way out. Your decision to inform the MC's father was a smart one, and it seems to have worked, as you're no longer bothered by their pranks. Let this story serve as a reminder of how important it is to maintain your dignity and be able to resolve conflicts with understanding and tolerance. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to know when the new video comes out, and hit the like button to support the channel.